TDS dropped a massive live event recently, but it only lasted around 2 hours, and it was brutal. But fortunately, the event will come back next Saturday, and every Saturday. Probably on the same time too, maybe till people have 4 banned skins already. You only get 1 banned skin crate every time the live event happens again, or every Saturday. A lot of people are complaining about the event's difficulty, so I'll be making a guide so people can get to the final wave and obtain the banned crate. And for damage control, also, there isn't a strategy document for this guide. A document might not be reliable since below could just add random modifiers to your game which could screw everything. Maybe even spawn a random enemy or boss. It's unpredictable with admin abuse. Alright, first things first, you remember that the max player count for the event is 6 players, right? Well, it's best to avoid having that big of a party. Just stick to the good old 4-player count. Because the economy in 6 players is terrible, since the cash reward from all enemies is split equally among you guys, so it takes a while to upgrade towers. Some people were lucky they got a cash injection from admin abusing. Secondly, try not to use preset loadouts. Unless you're a level 10 and have nothing. But if you're a level 50 who owns most of the towers I recommended, try not to use them. Actually, the preset loadout could work. But you have to communicate what towers you need. For an entire team, you likely only need 1 to 2 tactician players for DJ. These players will be kinda useless for early game though. At least 1 player should have the crowd control loadout for commander and electroshocker. Then 1 specialist player for medic tower. The rest can just use crowd control or specialist loadout presets. These presets are also one of the best picks. Pick either one of them depending on what your team needs. I still don't recommend preset loadouts since they're not really an optimal choice of beating the game, and early game choices seem underwhelming. You could have 2 commander players which you do not need, but people choose them to get more electroshockers and rocketeers. There's a slasher tower in a preset loadout, which is one of the most useless towers for the event. There's also some underwhelming options, like military base. That's why it isn't suggested to use it. Thirdly, most players are used to doing farms and ordinary DPS gameplay. The event is completely different from that, so don't even think of bringing farms anymore. That's probably the main reason why the event is stupidly hard for most people. Instead, bring crowd control towers such as Rocketeer, Mortar, Ace Pilot, Toxic Gunner. And stalling towers like Electroshocker, Jester, Freezer, and more. You need to bring those kinds of towers to get to the final wave. I'll be listing some tower recommendations to use. Going from non-special towers, to special towers. As for the first tower, it's going to be Electroshocker. This tower is the go-to stall for the entire game, and also has great crowd control. This tower is literally needed for null beasts since they can almost stall them permanently. You need this tower to be placed in this area to get good stalling value. Even if the enemy has like no stun immunity. This doesn't stop the enemies from getting stalled by Electroshocker, it just makes it less effective. But if you have more level 4 Electroshockers, this barely helps the enemy. The stalling part greatly helps synergize that aspect, and also for other splash towers like Rocketeer. It helps group up enemies to be closer together so the splash radius can do wonders. The fact that this tower is not just insanely overpowered at stalling but it also has really good crowd control, are my reasons why I prefer bringing Electroshocker as my main staller. Make sure you place the tower in the curves. Freezer, also a good stalling tower with an insane max slowness. It can stall the final boss well, but I don't find it as impressive as Electroshocker since the event is heavily crowd-based. Crook Boss, this guy is pretty good for early game. Its crooks from the back can help clear leaks coming out from Crook Boss and also adds more DPS too. It also has hidden detection on that minion. It's a great counter against Wave 4 where it sends an aggro revenant that's tanky and forces all of your DPS towers to target it, allowing hiddens to sneak through. Other than that, that's all his use cases. You just place him down on these spots and get it to level 2. This includes the golden version too. Rocketeer, this guy is insanely overpowered for this event. The Rocketeer bait balancing didn't even work where no explosion enemies shows up on wave 11. These enemies takes 0 damage from all explosive damage sources by the way. It has good early game DPS with decent range to cover the curve. It's cheap to place down and level it up too. It has the role of a single DPS tower and crowd control. Pair it with a staller to clump up enemies, then it's a goat tower. Just don't overdo Rocketeers too much since Actor 2 and Eclipse are completely immune to its damage. For late game DPS, you want to use either Ranger or Turret. They're really good for teams but more so on Turret cause the map lacks clip spaces for Rangers. Turret also has a very low placement limit so you can place more towers like Rocketeer. Try not to use minigunner on a quad or trio game, since you can't get a lot of them. Usually any other late game DPS tower should work for the event though. Of course support towers are in this list. Commander, DJ, Medic, and Mercenary base. Here's a tip for DJ, try to use DJ's purple track ability for stalling since it's insanely underrated and good for the event. It can slow down all enemies that isn't a boss by 50%, the perfect spot to place support towers is around this area. For the veterans, let's start off something unique. Toxic Gunner, an underrated tower for this event. It's really good for crowd control in the early game. All you need to do is to use random targeting, so every bullet is spread out which allows the poison can do its thing and deal 6 damage later on, then it goes insane at level 2, having a max elapsed damage of 24 per poisoned enemy. We have Archer of course with his overpowered early game crowd control use and stall for later waves, fire arrows for wide-ranged crowd control, electric arrows for stalling, and explosive arrows for DPS and short splash radius. It has an insane range too, a perfect combo with Swarmer which is also in this list. Swarmer, an excellent boss killer tower that can also perform decently on hordes thanks to its B-bomb ability. You could also use random targeting too. It doesn't rely much on support since it heavily relies on bee stings which cannot be buffed other than applying it on an enemy faster. This tower needs extra DPS support to perform very well since it can be unreliable on multiple enemies. Lastly, Firework Technician. Another support tower that adds even more explosive DPS to your towers. It pairs great with Rocketeer and Shotgunner. The all detections buff can also help a bit on wave 4 and early flyings in case if you've forgotten about detection enemies. That's all of the recommended towers in this list. The next live event is apparently going to be more balanced as they said. I assume that means it becomes easier so the devs can do more admin abuse which is the added random difficulty. Maybe they'll spawn some event bosses. Also it's gonna stay longer too. Anyways, that's it for today. Hope you know what to do in the event and immediately win since the chances should be likely if they're gonna nerf it. Thanks for watching.